In the Indo-Pacific, a dramatic collision between the two Chinese ships chasing a Philippines boat embarrasses Beijing and exposes chinks in China's armor.
A Chinese research vessel and 4 China Coast Guard ships are monitored in the vicinity of the Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea.
It isn't every day you hear about 2 giant Chinese vessels colliding head-on in open waters. Yet that's exactly what unfolded in the South China Sea. And these weren't ordinary ships. One was a China Coast Guard cutter. The other, a guided missile destroyer from the People's Liberation Army Navy. The Coast Guard ship's bow crumpled like a crushed soda can after slamming into the warship. Within hours, the footage exploded online, sparking disbelief, ridicule, and heated debates across Asia. But here's the catch. This was no random mishap. According to retired US Admiral Thomas Harper, the incident is evidence that the Philippine Coast Guard, despite being smaller in size, is showing sharper seamanship, tighter discipline, and smarter tactics than China's much larger fleet. And that raises one question worth asking. How has the Philippines, with a handful of ships compared to Beijing's armada, managed to outshine one of the world's biggest navies? On paper, China's maritime power looks unstoppable. Hundreds of warships, Coast Guard vessels, and shadowy militia craft sweeping across the South China Sea. Yet, as Admiral Harper points out, sheer numbers don't equal capability. The Philippine Coast Guard and Navy may have a fraction of that firepower, but they've mastered something China can't manufacture: skill, patience, battle-tested seamanship. Filipino officers have trained side by side with the US Navy in massive Pacific drills, sailed with Japan's top commanders, and partnered with Australia's toughest captains in joint patrols. They aren't only steering ships, they're outthinking rivals. And when the distance between vessels shrinks to just meters, their precision shows. In 2023, during a high-stakes standoff at Second Thomas Shoal, a Philippine supply boat slipped past 2 Chinese Coast Guard blockades without taking a single scratch. Analysts compared it to threading a needle while being shoved from both sides. Meanwhile, many of Beijing's officers climbed the ranks fast, picked more for loyalty than maritime mastery. They often skip the hours of grinding multinational drills, leaving them overconfident and under-tested. The result? Costly blunders, from scraping their own pier in Hainan, to colliding with Vietnamese ships, even colliding with their own vessels in practice runs. Think of it like this. One driver learned by surviving years of dangerous mountain roads. The other breezed through a test on a wide, empty highway. And that leads to a bigger question. In waters where one wrong maneuver could spark an international crisis, would you rather have the larger vessel or the better sailor? To see why these encounters between Manila and Beijing matter, you have to pull back and look at the board. This is a maritime chess match that's been unfolding for decades. Beijing claims nearly the entire South China Sea under its sweeping 9-dash line, a claim that cuts into the exclusive zones of multiple nations, including the Philippines. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled those claims had no legal standing. Beijing shrugged it off. This tension goes back further. As far back as the early 2000s, Filipino fishermen noticed Chinese ships circling their waters, shadowing them like predators sizing up prey. Then came the 2012 Scarborough Shoal standoff, a turning point. For weeks, Chinese and Philippine ships locked in a tense game of maritime chicken, the balance of power shifting with every move. Beijing eventually seized control, cutting Filipino fishermen off from waters their families had depended on for generations. The pressure then shifted toward Ayungin Shoal, where a small unit of Philippine Marines still holds out aboard the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting World War II ship grounded in 1999 and turned into a forward outpost. Every mission to resupply that ship has turned into a dangerous gamble. Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels routinely try to block the way, flooding crews with blinding laser lights, pounding them with high-pressure water cannons, or closing in at ramming distance. In 2023 alone, supply boats from the Philippines faced several near disasters. One convoy, outnumbered and hemmed in, pulled off a daring breakthrough, zigzagging tight patterns and skimming across shallow reefs that the heavier Chinese ships couldn't risk entering. Each tense encounter sharpened the Philippine Coast Guard and Navy into veterans of real-world maritime brinkmanship. Their officers operate knowing that any trip could spiral into a crisis, that every maneuver is a move in a high-stakes game where the wrong decision could spark headlines worldwide. This is more than steering a ship. It's about nerves of steel, patience under pressure, and the instinct to think 3 steps ahead. Wouldn't you say that surviving constant harassment and still carrying out the mission creates a kind of strength no amount of hardware or money can duplicate? What makes the Philippine Coast Guard and Navy formidable is not the steel of their vessels. It's the skill and resilience of the people commanding them. Their training is relentless. Crews drill in their own coastal waters, then test themselves across the world's busiest maritime corridors. They take part in Balikatan exercises with the US military, pushing through everything from high-speed rescues to confrontations with superior fleets. They sail with Japan's Maritime Defense Force, learning advanced maneuvering, shipboard damage control, and even electronic warfare. None of it is ceremonial. Every drill sharpens reflexes, coordination, and teamwork under stress. Picture this: a small Philippine patrol boat staring down 3 larger vessels intent on blocking its path. It isn't heavy weapons that determine the outcome. It's the split-second choices, the ability to read the currents and wind, the awareness of how each ship moves. Time and again, Philippine crews have proven they can turn situations that look unwinnable into carefully calculated escapes, flipping danger into advantage. That is why Admiral Harper emphasizes their edge. Superiority here isn't counted in warships or guns. It's measured in seamanship, coordination, and composure under fire. With a smaller fleet, the Philippines has cultivated the skill to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast rivals who appear stronger on paper. Take one drill near Subic Bay. A Philippine patrol boat simulated a mission to rescue a stranded vessel, all while being chased by a larger aggressor. Instead of being overwhelmed, the crew pulled off a textbook escape and completed the rescue. For a small fleet, that level of precision is what turns survival into strength. Observers from Allied navies described the operation as a textbook display of precision, flawless coordination, and steady hands under fire. That's the edge Philippine forces bring into every high-risk encounter. On the vast chessboard of the South China Sea, skill, discipline, and teamwork often weigh heavier than raw numbers and heavy guns. The recent collision between 2 Chinese vessels reads like more than a quirky headline. It stands as a warning. If ships from the same navy, supposedly moving under a unified command, collide in open waters. What does that reveal about their structure and readiness? At the same time, the Philippine Coast Guard continues to carry out escorts, run resupply missions, and hold its line in contested waters, all without major accidents, even under constant provocation. That kind of consistency has earned respect, not only at home, but among veteran admirals from partner fleets. Which explains why Admiral Harper's words resonated. China's forces discovered the hard way that the Philippine Coast Guard is proving superior where it matters most. The question now lingers. Will Beijing rethink its tactics, or tighten its grip and risk more public embarrassment on the open sea? The South China Sea remains one of the world's most volatile flashpoints. Every maneuver, every patrol, every near miss between ships is more than a routine operation. It's a live test of nerve and seamanship. History has shown time and again, from the age of sails to the era of missile destroyers, victory goes to those with better sailors, not simply heavier weapons. And today, the Philippine Coast Guard is showing that sharp navigation, relentless discipline, and smart decision-making shine brighter than fleet size alone. The Chinese crash is a reminder written in steel: overconfidence can sink even the strongest vessel. For the Philippines, the moment stands as quiet proof that in these contested waters, true mastery still rules the sea.